grief he seized his spear and hurled it. He aimed better than he had intended, for the poor mermaid gave a piercing shriek and disappeared in the depths. The fisherman stood on the strand waiting for her to appear again. He observed that the water around him began to take on a soft sheen of beauty that he had never seen before. It shimmered in pink and white like the colour play on the inside of seashells. As the glittering water lapped the shores, the fisherman thought that they too were transformed. They began to blossom and waft their perfumes. A soft sheen spread over them, and they also took on a beauty which they had never possessed before. He understood how all this had come to pass. For it is thus with mermaids: one who beholds them must needs find them more beautiful than anyone else. And the mermaid's blood being mixed with the water that bathed the shores, her beauty was transferred to both. All who saw them must love them and yearn for them. This was their legacy from their mermaid. When the stately old gentleman had got thus far in his narrative, he turned to Clement and looked at him. Clement nodded reverently, but made no comment, as he did not wish to cause a break in the story. "Now you must bear this in mind, Clement," the old gentleman continued, with a roguish glint in his eyes. "From that time on, people emigrated to the islands. At first only fishermen and peasants settled there, but others, too, were attracted to them. One day the king and his earl sailed up the stream. They started at once to talk of these islands, having observed they were so situated that every vessel that sailed toward Lake Mälar had to pass them. The earl suggested that there ought to be a lock put on the channel, which could be opened or closed at will, to let in merchant vessels and shut out pirates. This idea was carried out," said the old gentleman, as he rose and began to trace in the sand with his cane. "On the largest of these islands the earl erected a fortress with a strong tower, which was called Kärnan, and around the island a wall was built. Here, at the north and south ends of the wall, they made gates and placed strong towers over them. Across the other islands they built bridges. These were likewise equipped with high towers. Out in the water, round about, they put a wreath of piles with bars that could open and close, so that no vessel could sail past without permission. Therefore, you see, Clement, the four islands which had lain so long unnoticed were soon strongly fortified. But this was not all, for the shores and the sound tempted people, and before long they came from all quarters to settle there. They built a church which has since been called Storkyrkan. Here it stands near the castle, and here, within the walls, were the little huts the pioneers built for themselves. They were primitive, but they served their purpose. More was not needed at that time to make the place pass for a city, and the city was named Stockholm. There came a day, Clement, when the earl who had begun the work went to his final rest, and Stockholm was without a master builder. Monks called the Grey Friars came to the country. Stockholm attracted them. They asked permission to erect a monastery there, so the king gave them an island, one of the smaller ones, this one facing Lake Mälar. There they built, and the place was called Grey Friars Island. Other monks came, called the Black Friars. They too asked for right to build in Stockholm, near the south gate. On this, the larger of the islands north of the city, a Holy Ghost house or hospital was built, while on the smaller one thrifty men put up a mill, and along the little islands close by the monks fished. As you know, There is only one island now, for the canal between the two has filled up, but it is still called Holy Ghost Island. And now, Clement, all the little wooded islands were dotted with houses, but still people kept streaming in, for these shores and waters have the power to draw people to them. Hither came pious women of the order of Saint Clara and asked for ground to build upon. For them there was no choice but to settle on the north shore, at Norrmalm, as it is called. You may be sure that they were not over pleased with this location, for across Norrmalm ran a high ridge, and on that the city had its gallows hill, so that it was a detested spot. Nevertheless, the poor Clares erected their church and their convent on the strand below the ridge. After they were established there, they soon found plenty of followers. Upon the ridge itself were built a hospital and a church, consecrated to Saint Goran, and just below the ridge a church was erected to Saint Jacob. And even at Södermalm, where the mountain rises perpendicularly from the strand, they began to build. There they raised a church to Saint Mary. But you must not think that only cloister folk moved to Stockholm. There were also many others, principally German tradesmen and artisans. These were more skilled than the Swedes, and were well received. They settled within the walls of the city, where they pulled down the wretched little cabins that stood there, and built high, magnificent stone houses. But space was not plentiful within the walls. Therefore they had to build the houses close together, with gables facing the narrow by lanes. So you see, Clement, that Stockholm could attract people." At this point in the narrative another gentleman appeared and walked rapidly down the path toward the man who was talking to Clement, but he waved his hand, and the other remained at a distance. The dignified old gentleman still sat on the bench beside the fiddler. "Now, Clement, you must render me a service," he said. "I have no time to talk more with you, but I will send you a book about Stockholm, and you must read it from cover to cover. I have, so to speak, laid the foundation of Stockholm for you. Study the rest out for yourself, and learn how the city has thrived and changed. Read how the little narrow wall enclosed city on the islands has spread into this great sea of houses below us. Read how, on the spot where the dark tower Kärnan once stood, the beautiful, light castle below us was erected, and how the Grey Friars Church has been turned into the burial place of the Swedish kings. Read how islet after islet was built up with factories, how the ridge was lowered and the sound filled in, how the truck gardens and the south and north ends of the city have been converted into beautiful parks or built up quarters, how the king's private deer park has become the people's favorite pleasure resort. You must make yourself at home here, Clement. This city does not belong exclusively to the Stockholmers. It belongs to you and to all Swedes. As you read about Stockholm, remember that I have spoken the truth, for the city has the power to draw every one to it. First the king moved here, then the nobles built their palaces here, and then one after another was attracted to the place. So that now, as you see, Stockholm is not a city unto itself or for nearby districts. It has grown into a city for the whole kingdom. You know, Clement, that there are judicial courts in every parish throughout the land, but in Stockholm they have jurisdiction for the whole nation. You know that there are judges in every district court in the country, but at Stockholm there is only one court to which all the others are accountable. You know that there are barracks and troops in every part of the land, but those at Stockholm command the whole army. Everywhere in the country you will find railways.